Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's college basketball webcast. This is sports editor Joe Walljasper along with Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Walentik. Steve, last week we talked about Missouri going on the road for 2 games and how they would probably be happy to split, which they did. They win 95-89 in overtime at Texas Tech in a game that it looked like they might win handily, then they kind of botched the end, but came back in overtime and won. Then they lose 66-61 to Oklahoma. Maybe just some of your things that stick out in your mind from your week of travels.
Well, I definitely thought a split would be good, and it's kind of revisionist history that, you feel a little unsatisfied with that if you're a Missouri fan, I think, because the Oklahoma game was certainly winnable. Leading at halftime, had a 10-0 run to start the game, and really should have been up a lot more than that with as bad as Oklahoma was playing at the beginning. They let the Sooners back in, not a particularly overwhelming Oklahoma team, and I think that kind of leaves a bitter taste in fans' mouths and certainly players and Mike Anderson's mouths. They didn't shoot the ball well in either game. They really haven't shot the ball well in any Big 12 game to this point. That's a little bit concerning. Right now they're shooting 35% the past 2 games from the field and just over 30 from three-point range. And this is a team that is heavily dependent on three-point shooting to win with their limitations inside. Not to be completely negative, though, I mean, they did manage to win one of those games. They had a shot to win both without playing that well, and so maybe that's a positive sign. I thought they did a really good job after blowing an 8-point lead at the end of overtime or regulation in the last minute of regulation in Lubbock. They did a really good job of starting out overtime and regaining control, their composure, getting the upper hand, and finishing off that game. So
I thought, too, that it wasn't – defensively they didn't just totally melt down. Texas Tech hit some really long three-pointers. Missouri did screw up against the press a couple times to allow that to happen, but it didn't seem – I guess I didn't feel like it was a total meltdown at the end. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, they got hot and hit some crazy shots, and that could have rattled Missouri more than it did. Obviously Dixon had the one turnover that was bad that allowed Tech to ultimately draw even and force overtime, but even he, kind of redeemed himself by making 4 free throws at the end of the overtime. So, I think for a first conference road game, I think Mike Anderson had to be pretty happy with that performance.
From the very beginning this year, beginning with the first game when he got hurt, it's been tough for J.T. Tiller. I think watching Big 12 play these 3 games, it's kind of struck me that they probably have been a little better team without him on the floor when they have Dixon instead of him. What do you think has kind of gone wrong with his season, and maybe how correctable is it?
Well, I think it's very correctable. I really think, there was a lot of talk going into the year on the part of Mike Anderson, on the part of a lot of other people, that he was going to need to become more of an offensive presence for them. And I think maybe he took that to mean he needed to score more. And that hasn't really proved to be the case because guys like Kim English and Marcus Denman and Lawrence Bowers have become more consistent scorers with more minutes. What they really need is for Tiller to continue to do the things that he did last year, which is be a playmaking guard, which he was very effective at last season. He led the team in assists. He had a great assist-to-turnover ratio. He hasn't been doing those things this season. He's gotten himself into trouble by seemingly playing out of control a little bit, driving too far into the basket, getting into traffic, either throwing up wild shots that missed the mark or losing the ball. And those numbers are reflected in his assist-to-turnover ratio, which is right now about half of what it was last season. I think if he just settles down a little bit and tries to trust his teammates a little bit more, be more of a playmaker instead of trying to look for his own shot sometimes, I think this is all very fixable, and he can have a really strong finish to his senior season. I think maybe something clicked for him. We're going to see, obviously, in the week ahead. But he had conversations with his coaches after the Oklahoma game, and they told him basically that message that he needs to just kind of settle down and relax. And I think if he does that, there's plenty of time for him to become the player that he was last season again.
I think sometimes when kids go in their senior years, and I don't know if this was the case with him, but they kids who aren't great shooters who think, if I'm going to play at any level in the pros, I need to be able to shoot the ball. I need to prove this. And then they work on it all summer, and then they feel kind of bound and determined, I'm going to prove that I can do it. I can remember even going back as far as Julian Winfield was like a really good player, and then decided he wanted to try to shoot the ball, and it took a while to realize what he was good at was he should go back to the way he was before. And I think that's kind of true with Tiller. I think if they can get some of these games into open court games, and that kind of plays into his hands too, where he can get steals, shoot layups, and kind of get. So he's not thinking so much. It seems like he kind of makes up his mind when he gets the ball in his hand what he's going to do, regardless of whether there's much of an opening to do what he wants to do. But like I said, he's not a guy that, it'd be a different story if they needed him to score that much and he was in a slump, but they really don't. I think he could blend in a lot more than he's realizing at the moment.
Yeah, and I think he was misled a little bit by the perception of this team going into the year, which was that they had a huge offensive hole that had to be filled with losing Carolyn, Lyons, and Lawrence, and that he was going to have to be one of the guys that do that. And it really, it's not his strength. His strength is as a playmaker. He was very effective at that last season, and also as a lockdown defensive player. And he really, it's hard to measure that, but I don't get the sense that he's been quite as good on that end of the floor either this season.
Missouri plays Nebraska this weekend at 5 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, Missouri women, who we haven't talked about much at all, actually, play against Baylor. Now, Baylor has a 6'8" lady named Brittney Griner who's dunking all over the place. Nebraska kind of known for just sort of slowing it down and trying to bore you into submission. Which game could be the most interesting, you think?
I definitely would take the women's game. Doc Sadler, God bless him, he's good at what he does, but it's not entertaining basketball. And we've seen it now for this is the 4th season he's been in Lincoln, and they do the same thing. Every year I think he starts out talking about how they want to run, they want to push the pace, but they are always playing games in the 50s and not able to score. And there probably will be more dunks in that women's game, 1 o'clock as opposed to 5 o'clock.
I'm not trying to be a shill for the athletic department or anything, but if you're someone who just kind of generally interested in basketball, this is probably someone who's going to be playing in the Olympics or something down the line. It might be kind of interesting to see what she's got against Missouri. Missouri is obviously very much a struggling team that's 0-3 in the Big 12, but just seeing her, I think, might be interesting.
Yeah, more interesting than any of the Huskers players. I think they've got one player averaging double figures right now for the season. So
yeah. All right, some quick thoughts from you. Missouri's final Big 12 record.
I'm going to say 9-7 right now. Still a lot of tough games left with a couple against Kansas, one against K-State, one against Texas. And if Missouri can't shoot the ball away from home, which we don't know if they can, it's going to be tough for them to win too many road games.
9-7 might be a good kind of baseline. I think they could go 10-6 if they go 7-1 at home, and they would obviously only have to pick up 2 more road wins. So that would be pretty doable, I think. But I think 9-7 would probably get them in the tournament with ease.
Yeah, I think absolutely, especially with the strength of the Big 12 this season.
So let's say they do make the NCAA tournament. Let's say they do go 9-7. What sort of seed do you think that would set them up for?
I think probably about a 9, maybe somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. But I'd center on a 9 seed. Not a great non-conference resume, but the K-State win certainly after last night beating Texas is going to help them, and I think that'd be pretty realistic.
All right. Missouri travels to Kansas next Monday. What sort of percentage chance you give them?
Maybe about 5%. It's not very high. It's been a while since they've won an Allen Fieldhouse, and this Kansas team's pretty good.
All right. Lastly, any Big 12 coach lose his job after this season?
I don't think so. You could look at Doc Sadler and Greg McDermott, and they've been both. This is their 4th season. They've kind of been underwhelming. Have some limitations at those 2 places, at Nebraska and Iowa State. I think McDermott might be under more pressure because this was supposed to be the season that they broke through, and it hasn't quite worked out that way yet. But I think they both still get another year at least.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Next week we will talk about the Nebraska game, but more so we'll talk about the visit to Allen Fieldhouse.